In this pitch, we are going to tell you and show you how we're going to plan an erotic thriller that is targeted towards the teenage to young adult audience. We have great aspirations to this erotic thriller, as many erotic thrillers in the past have succeeded, such as Boy Next Door, Basic Instinct, and Fatal Attraction. We will be looking forward to making this film and showing you the steps we are going to take.
We plan to produce the erotic thriller that its key characters part of the LGBTQ plus community, subsequently exploring themes of trauma and exclusivity. This is done as it's unique and uncommon among the erotic thriller genre. On top of this, it will appeal to a more contemporary audience as they live in a more progressively inclined environment almost. By doing this, we challenge the archaic ideas of bygone era. So technically we aim to create notions of today's society being more inclusive instead of exclusive as it once was. It will begin with our main character being introduced as they lure victims to be killed. This conveys the threat instantly of the antagonist, so we instantly see that no one to mess around with. We will see the murders as the characters go, so reinforcing the threat that our characters possess. Yeah.
These characters are here with the intention for the audiences to dislike them, challenging the stereotypical portrayal of detectives in the thriller film. On top of this, they will also encourage audiences to challenge characters' more positions. This could make the film intriguing as audiences could perceive certain characters differently. I believe that the inclusion of LGBTQ+ in media and entertainment is key, and it can normalise something that was previously seen as taboo, as well as giving a platform to members of the LGBTQ+ to have portrayals. I believe that our production is uniquely intriguing as it has distinctive plot details that are unseen within the erotic genre.
For the plot, do you want me to go through a whole movie plot, or just the intro, or what we set up so far, or just what I thought about the whole plot? Because we can say how we planned the beginning of we've got establishing shots in the wood with the two characters, well they're only really two characters because obviously we've only been an opening. I can tell you what's happening in that, or I can tell you about the whole plot and for the whole film if it was to be a whole film.
Let's hear about the whole film is going to be made, and then how you stripped it down to
basically, our whole film is based around this this boy grew up with a ton of trauma in a household. He grew up with a really sporty, aggressive, alcoholic dad. She got beaten. He was never really a sporty kid. He was sort of the arty sort of crafts, but dad wanted a sporty son, like a sort of Tom Brady son. He could do football, but he was never like that. So he grew up with trauma and past experience. So when he grew up, he grew up to dislike obviously his male figure in life. His male figure was being athletic, alcoholic. So when he grew up, he despised sort of all those that followed sports and sort of the jock stereotypes. So when growing up with this trauma and having mother figure involved, they grew up and he grows up to despise these jocks, go to his school, and he just wants to do something about all the trauma. So he comes sort of this catfish figure where he catfishes these stereotypical jocks, and I think to represent jocks, I think we should have it in with all the murders taking place, it should have a blue sort of theme. So it sort of it does with all the jocks that we will use in the film, we should represent them with a blue sort of colour scheme. This would sort of allow the audience to go, oh, that's a jock. Throughout the film they go, oh, I know that's a jock because the last one was also wearing blue, blah 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 blah. They do this in films like Split. I'm not Split. Sorry. They do this in a film called Unbreakable. With the characters, they use like key colours like purple to signify a key moment where the audience should listen. So it makes it easiest for the audience to sort of pay attention, to know what is going on. And then we will like sort of develop on that. So like the whole film will be based on this character coming like a catfish, going around and murdering these like jock characters. And we'll have 2 detectives, but the twist is that detectives aren't going to be the sort of Morgan Freeman, is it Brad Pitt, like likable detectives? Because in most thriller films, the detectives are the people you side with and people you like. In this, we're going to turn it around where you sympathise with the murderer, but it's also a more dilemma because then you sympathise with the murderer, but is what he's doing right in sort of a weird way. And then we have developed the film. And at the start, we're going to have establishing shots in woods over in the hill, and we're going to have a few establishing shots, and then we're going to cut to them. We're going to bring in the characters. We're going to see the girl sort of leading the murderer who's dressed as the girl leading this boy along into the woods, and she's sort of like encouraging him, like, come on, blah blah blah, until the point where we get to this point where the murder happens for our first, and we're on in the established shots, we of course have the titles, like probably in the bottom left corner, small white, maybe sort of like a scary font, thriller-esque font, and that's basically the plot.
I've got one question for you, which is you've talked quite a lot in your pitch about the idea of trying to include representation of the yeah, but you're making that character the murderer, aren't you?
Yeah.
So that's a very complex representation in the sense of you talked quite a lot about threat, and this idea of this murderer posing a significant threat to your heterosexual community and having to catfish in order to capture them. Do you think that's going to create a positive modern representation, or is that going to reinforce the traditional, quite archaic representation?
I feel as though the more progressive audience wouldn't respond as acidically as an older audience would, but they view it as, oh, they're attacking us, instead of, why is this person doing this? So we seek to explore themes and reasons. So in the end, it's not truly just the antagonist, but you get to understand almost the journey that they went through to come like that. To create a more like relatable character.
Although
So they became transgender because they were abused.
that's the issue that you
That's how it happened.
potentially pose,
Right.
is that your the issue you've got is you've got this character and your reasoning that you're offering behind the reason why that they're not just a murderer but also trans is based on this idea of abuse, as if something's. So I think that's the only thing that you've got to find a right balance with, because you're not connecting with what you want to do, because you want to promote inclusivity and this idea of positive modern representation, but actually the representation is built on, I think, really traditional, old-fashioned stereotypes. But I think you've got a balance there that you've got to try and seek to try and.
Like, say something. So in media, the whole trans killer thing is already quite a harmful stereotype. So like, what are you doing to like kind of subvert it?
I guess a lot in media, it's you see the trans killer and you don't really delve into why. It's more of just different killing people. Oh no, it must stop. Like a quite reductive view of trans people in most media, and all of the LGBT community. Recent times it's just been, they must be the protagonist, for we cannot risk showing them in a different light. But that's also a reductive view, because not everyone's a good person, it doesn't matter how you identify. But we seek to subvert almost the established form of the trans villain by getting her more relatable almost, showing her in more of a understandable light.